Thanks for tuning in to the 3D Tutor.
Hey guys, and welcome to this part 2 interior tutorial, which can be used for any engine, but we're going to be focusing on using the Unreal Editor 4. Now, like I was saying, it can be used for any engine, so you can adapt what I'm showing in these videos to your engine of choice. Now what we're going to do is we're going to continue with this tutorial. Where we left off last time was kind of just creating the hallway and this second room, and we had a bit of cleanup to do, and we're kind of deciding on what to clean up and what not to do. Okay guys, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating the window in this second room, and then we're going to be moving on and unwrapping one of the rooms as well, so getting it all prepared for the texturing stage. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to drag our template. So we already named this last time, called window frame front of house. So that's the template for the front of the house, and I'm going to drag that forward. Now don't forget, I didn't move this box up or down, meaning it's still going to be aligned perfectly along the axes. All I need to do is push it forward and make sure it's roughly in the middle of the room. Now I'm going to go kind of estimating it for now, and I'll sort of tweak the position in a short while. So I'm going to leave it there for now. Next, I'm going to be looking at this room. Now there's a lot of stuff that I can clean up, but I'm not going to focus on that just yet. I'm going to be doing that a little bit later, because there are some excess edges here that I don't really need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be first of all selecting the edges. So you can hit the number 2 on the keyboard or click on the edge icon and select the edge which is running parallel, sort of horizontally through this wall where we're going to be putting the window. Okay, so we're going to go on that and hit backspace. Next we're going to go to polygon, so hit number 5 on the keyboard, or again click on the polygon icon. Select the poly that's facing you. Now if you can't select it, it means you've got to select ignore back facing. Okay, so you need to have it ticked, because if you don't, you're going to be selecting the ceiling, and you have to click a few times to get through that. But if you go on to ignore back facing, it makes life a lot easier, and you can just click on any poly that is facing you. So once you've got that highlighted, you're going to go on to inset. So this is going to be the same as before. We're going to create an inset. Don't worry too much about it being perfect and any excess kind of edges that are showing or anything like that. We're going to fix that in a little while. So I'm going to hit the tick. I'm then going to go onto the scale and just roughly. So I'm going to go on scale by pressing R on the keyboard, and then I'm going to be scaling it sideways like that. So it's kind of roughly in the same size and shape as our template box. Once you kind of got it close to where it needs to be, you can actually go in and start selecting edges, and then you can go into your view, your left view, and you can sort of line it up by dragging it up and lining it up. Now for whatever reason, if you can't see your edge in your orthographic view, but you can see the gizmo but no red line, so you can't see the edge at all, it means you're on the wrong view. So this is currently left, but if I was to change this to right, you'll notice how the line, I can't see the line anymore. Alright, so I can't select it, I can't see it, but if I select it in this view just here, I can still move the gizmo and I can still move the edge. Okay, so you can see how it updates there. So if you have this issue, make sure you just flip the view to the opposite side. What you're basically doing is if you can't see it, you're trying to see it from this side, and you can't because there's no polygon there, or it's there but you can't see the back of a poly, therefore you can't see an edge. Okay, so I'm just going to go in and just sort of loosely place that where it needs to go, so that's going to be okay. The bottom one as well, I'm just going to move that up. Again, I'm being very quick with this. You can obviously zoom in and be a little bit more precise. And then going to select both of these edges on the right side, move them across. Boom, that'll do. And I'm just going to do the same here. Perfect. Okay, so that's now the shape of the window created. I can then just deselect my edge selection and then move that back. So you can see what that looks like. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up now, because right now it's not really looking too great. So I'm going to go in on vertex and go to target weld. So what we're going to look for is we're going to weld this point into the top corner there, the point just there to there, so you're kind of removing all these excess bits. So that's going to go to there. This is going to go to there. Let's work our way around. That one's going to go to that corner. This one's going to go to this corner just here. This one's going to go up to here. And likewise, in the opposite side, it's going to be a pretty similar story. So we're just making all these verts go into the corner. So you want to make sure that you rotate your view so you can see any ceiling edges that you've left behind, and that's kind of nicely cleaned up. Okay, I guess the very last thing that we need to do here on this window is we need to select the poly where the window actually will go, and you're going to extrude that back. Now again, this, if you don't remember the value which you set for the original window, it's not a big deal really. If you look at this view just here, now for you it might be a different view depending on the orientation of your rooms, but I'm just gonna sort of zoom in here and I'm gonna reduce that extrusion until it's kind of roughly lined up, and then hit the tick, and I can go on the move tool by pressing W, and when I can zoom in and just make sure it's the same extrusion amount. Once that's done, I can delete that poly, and then you're left with the same size window. And again, if you create a window frame here, you can duplicate it over on the other side and it will fit perfectly. So that's your window frames done. Now I could go in and expand on the doors here, but that's going to be a pretty similar thing. Basically select the edges just here, right, and you'd connect two edges down, you'd extrude a little bit, exactly the same process as what I did to expand from this room to the hallway, and from the hallway, oh, go away, virus protection, and we're going to go over, and basically you would do the same thing. Okay, so it's the same process exactly, so I'm not going to go through that again. If you're a bit unsure, then make sure you check the first part of this tutorial where I go over how to create these two rooms. Now what's next is I'm going to show you how you can texture the room. Before we do that, we're going to just apply some basic materials to it. Now we're going to put placeholder materials onto this. So we're going to go on to material editor, and we're going to go on a blank material, and we're going to name this material. Now it's very important that we name the materials so that we know what they're being applied for. So I'm going to call this corridors. Okay, so that's for the hallways. You can call it hallways, it's not even corridors, it's going to be a hallway. If you're doing a school, for instance, you could call it a corridor. So that's a hallway. I'm going to apply that to the whole thing right now. Okay, now you might be thinking, why are you applying the hallway material to the entire thing? But that will become clear a little bit later. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to be going in and texturing one of the rooms. We're going to be unwrapping it anyway. So what we need to do before we do that is we need to actually detach the room. Okay, now you may be thinking, why are you detaching the room? And I'm going to explain that. To make it as simple as possible, we're going to be detaching the room so we don't have to unwrap the whole thing as one. Now what we could, I think the best thing to do is to detach it. There are numerous different ways that you can approach this, but this is the best way that I've found, the quickest way anyway. So I'm going to go in this top view. Again, I can expand the top view just by clicking on the button in the bottom right hand corner to maximize the viewport toggle. And I'm going to select all the polys in that room. Make sure ignore backfacing is turned off, else you're going to miss out all the ceiling and any polys that are facing away from you. Okay, so you want to make sure you select just that room itself. And you can see in here we've got the entire room highlighted. Okay, you also want to make sure that you've got these little polys around the door frame, or around the indentation, this spacing where the door will go. You want them selected as well. You don't want that selection to bleed over onto the hallway itself, so you want to ensure nothing is highlighted in the hallway. Now once you've got those selected, you can just scroll down and you can go down to detach, which you should see a little further down depending on the setup of your modifier. You find detach. Now when you detach, you want to make sure that you don't detach to an element and you don't detach as a clone. So if you have any of these ticked, you want to make sure that they're deselected. Okay, and then we're going to go and name this. Now the naming isn't really that important because you're going to be attaching it again later anyway. But I'm just going to call it reception 1. So I'm going to call it left, just because from the front of the house, which is on that side, it's actually on the left side. Okay, so now that's a separate object, so I'm going to deselect this. Now obviously you'd repeat this process on all of the rooms, but I'm going to show you on one room just so it gives you an idea of how it's done. Next we're going to go into unwrap UVW. Now you'll find that in the modifier list. You're going to scroll all the way down and you're going to go to unwrap UVW. Okay, now before you, in fact, yeah, it's a really good point. Let me get rid of that. Before you apply the unwrap modifier, you want to make sure that you've got nothing highlighted within edit poly. Okay, so anything highlighted in here, even if you don't have any vert selected or any poly selected, if you have the option highlighted, the selection mode highlighted yellow, then it's going to cause you problems in unwrap. So you want to hit the number 6 key on the keyboard, or just click on the icon again and it will deselect it. So just like I did before, we're going to add the unwrap UVW. We're going to use quick planar mapping. Now this is the quickest way to unwrap the object. I'm going to select polygon and I'm going to open the UV editor. So this is all of our UVs right now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically select one whole side. Now you can also use, to save yourself clicking by holding control and selecting all the polys, you can use select by planar angle and put it up to anything within 90 degrees, and that'll allow you to select a whole flat surface in one click. So that sort of bleeds over one poly onto other polys as well, but it doesn't bleed over like a 90-degree angle. So that's one side. So I'm going to then go on to the quick planar map tool. Now by default it should do a decent job of already aligning it up. So you see how you've got this square just here, this kind of template square, that's telling you which axes it's going to be unwrapping it on, and that seems to be pretty perfect. So I'm going to go and hit the quick planar map button, and when I hit that you can see in this edit UV window that is unwrapped, and I'm going to move that aside straight away. Don't click off it because that will mean you've kind of lost that selection, so you want to just hit Ctrl Z a few times and then move it across. I always tend to use the freeform mode because it's easier. It allows me to manipulate the object any way I like as well. All in one. It's pretty much got all the different functionalities of move, rotate and scale into one tool. Similar to the free transform mode in Photoshop. So I'm going to then go on to, let's go on the opposite side, and we're going to do a quick planar again. So that's the opposite side. I'm then going to do the left side. Let's quick planar map that. Now don't worry about the scaling of these because we're going to fix that a little bit later. Then do the right side. Quick planar map. There we go. So that's the two on that side, and what we have left is the top and the bottom. So we're going to do the top. Now if you ever wanted the ceiling and the floor to have the same texture, not that you would ever want that really, you can then hold control and select the ground as well, so you'd have both selected. And if you can actually basically just, you know, unwrap them together. There's no need to do each side one by one, but I'm going to be doing that just because I want them all to be different. So I'm going to place that out there. I'm going to select this one. I'm going to be quick planar mapping that. That's the ground, and there's a few more little bits to go. Now I'm going to be doing each one of these individually as well. So you see how this kind of indentation around the window. So I'm going to go, or the space for the window is going to go. I'm going to be quick planar mapping that side just there. I'm going to quick planar map the right side, and I'm going to quick planar map the top and the bottom individually. Now the reason why I'm doing this individually is because it kind of gives me the flexibility of having different textures on different parts. I don't want to have them looking exactly the same in case I have some sort of wear and tear on them. It's just going to look really naff and really you know, just mirrored, and we don't want that effect in our environment. We can do better than that. So those are those parts just there, and what you're left with is just the spacing around the door frame. Okay, so you would already have included this little poly just here because you got the select by planar angle. When you selected the ground, what happened was basically it also selected that poly there, so we're going to leave that. These sides actually don't need to be unwrapped because you're going to be creating a door frame later, which will be, you know, covering this area up anyway. So I'm not even going to unwrap those. I'm just going to grab them and I'm going to throw them out somewhere where I can't see them. It doesn't matter. they don't matter at all. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be scaling all of these into this space. Now you may be thinking that's a lot of room to be scaling into this small square, but let me remind you that this square is as big as you want it to be. It only looks small because I'm zoomed out, but if I was to zoom in really close, then it becomes a huge square. Okay, so we can change the texture resolution, and we're going to be using 2048 by 2048 just because it's quite a nice big texture, and it's going to allow us to create some really high resolution and high detail textures, hopefully. Okay, so what I'm going to do is also I'm just going to be selecting this button to show the active map, or to not show the active map in the background just here, and that clears it up, makes it a little bit easier to use. So I'm just going to be popping this in there, and you kind of want to give an equal kind of spacing to each room element, because you want them to all be just as detailed as each other. Okay, if you're going to have a wall with loads of like frames and a cabinet and stuff and you wouldn't really see it, then maybe you could give that wall a slightly smaller space on your texture sheet. But any area which is big and you want detail and you want it to look good, you want to make sure that you give it a good amount of space. So this is the floor and the ceiling, so I'm just going to line those up a little bit better, and I'm going to be holding control, scaling those down. I'm going to think about what I'm doing here. I'm going to be placing this one, which is the ceiling. So I don't really mind if the ceiling is a little bit lower. So I'm going to pop that just here. And in fact, let's pop the ceiling this way. So I can hold control and rotate this, and that's going to rotate by 5-degree increments, which makes life a little bit easier. I'm going to pop that there, and I'm going to stick this one going from here, holding control and scaling. Again, when you scale in here, make sure you hold control. If you don't, you're going to be doing it freeform, which kind of breaks the unwrap. It means that it's going to be stretching, and you definitely don't want that. Okay, if you want to see if your unwrap is correct, and I've shown you this in other videos, if you followed my videos before, you click onto the checker pattern list and you click onto checker pattern, and you want to make sure all of these checkers are square. If you don't hold control and you scale and you think, okay, I'm going to do that, stretch that, then you can see how those checkers are no longer square. So you need to make sure that you hold control, maintains the proportions of that unwrap. Okay, so now we've got a slightly bigger space for the ground. Now here we've got all the bits for the window kind of frame, or the spacing around the window. We're going to actually create a window frame separately, like I've mentioned before. We're going to overlap it so it kind of fills in this space, but we're still going to be able to see this. If you look at your window in your home, you've probably got a space around the windows as well. So I'm going to make sure again that the scaling's pretty accurate. Now the width of these are thinner, or they look thinner than these, because these panels are shorter. So when I unwrap them, they appeared bigger. So I'm going to just scale these down until they're roughly the same kind of thickness as the other ones. Okay, so again, they're going to be the same scale, and what I'll also do is possibly, I think the best course of action would be just to kind of move these across this way, and let's just pop them here. Don't know if we can get away with that. In fact, we could do something a lot simpler and just do something like that. Just get them in a little bit closer together, and that means that we can probably get away with scaling them up a little bit as well. There you go. So that's the entire room unwrapped. It's pretty neat. It's a pretty nice unwrap sheet, and all the checkers are looking square. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to quickly go onto tools. Now it's always important that you save your file as you go along. Okay, if you don't, 3ds Max could crash and you could lose all this, and the unwrap is quite a tedious process. You don't want to be losing that. So go onto tools. You're going to go onto relax. Not relax, what am I talking about? You're going to go to tools, you're going to go onto render UVW template, and then you're going to change the width and the height to 2048 by 2048. And then you're going to go and hit render UV template. Now it's going to look a little bit weird, but that's simply because you're zoomed out. So as you can see, when you zoom in, you can see all the lines. So ignore it if it looks a little bit patchy. You're then going to save. So I'm going to create a folder and name it UV template. and I'm going to call it textures actually, because I'm going to also be saving all my textures into there. And I'm going to be calling this UV template, and then just put a .jpg at the end, so that kind of saves you from having to select it from the drop down list where you can select JPEG, and you're going to hit save. That's going to bring you up this little box just here, and you want to make sure that the image control quality is set to 100 and then hit OK. Alright, so then you saved your UV template. So that's where I'm going to leave it for this tutorial, but in the next one I'm going to be showing you how you can create quite a nice texture using free, royalty free textures, and adding sort of depth into your environment as well, because nothing worse than having a really flat texture which is boring and it just doesn't complement, the style that you're going for. So I'm going to be going for quite a kind of oldie, almost decayed environment, and that's the kind of texture I'm going to be using. So stay tuned for the next part, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial. If you found it useful, then please hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll catch you all next time.